of Education in Florida recently appointed AIR to receive the $220 million contract for end-of-course exam testing and to prepare those tests. Please go on their website, click the link to what they're doing with youth, and you will see what their agenda really is. They are promoting as hard as they can any youth that is interested in the LGBT agenda, and even name it 2-S, which they define as having two spirits. The Bible says a lot about being double-minded. These people that will now receive $220 million from the state of Florida unless this is stopped will promote double-mindedness in state education and attract every one of your children to become as homosexual as they possibly can.
Kindergarten, that's right, along with snack time and nap time. Some very young children may soon be learning about anatomy and reproduction. The Chicago public school system is considering starting sex ed in kindergarten instead of 5th grade. Good idea or not? The 5 co-hosts, Andrea Tanteros joins us. Nice to see you, Andrea.
Good to see you too, Greta.
All right, so what's up with this? What do you think about this?
What is the world coming to? I remember getting a health class in 8th grade and then 11th grade, but it was nothing like this, Greta. I mean, these are 5-year-old kids, and I would argue we're just raising our kids too quickly. But these are standards that any school could adopt. Chicago just chose to adopt them, so they could be coming to a school near you.
All right, now you can opt out of them if you want for your children, but you've got, I mean, I suppose there are a lot of parents, for better or for worse, who are not necessarily paying attention to what's going on in these classrooms. Is that, I mean, fair? I mean, not every parent is attentive, so it's like this could slip through the cracks. It's not opting in, it's opting out.
That's right. Parents have the choice, but a lot of parents might not know this is going on. Look, it's a larger problem. There's a breakdown of the family. You know, we used to get this kind of education from our parents, from our churches, from our communities, and now there's a lot of kids who don't have that, and so the government is stepping in, which I think this is not the government's role to do this. And you know what, Greta? It's not very good when the government tries to start teaching values. They're not very good at it. Now, look, I realize with technology, it's hard to not to advocate for these kids, abstain, but I wonder, is abstinence part of this? I looked over the entire report and I didn't see any part of that.
Whose idea is this? I mean, is this the school district that's coming up with this, or the school, or the state, or the county? Who's coming up with this?
This is the city of Chicago. And Greta, what's really sad is the city of Chicago has bigger problems to deal with than sex ed. Right now, only 60% of Chicago high school students graduate. Only 6% graduate from college. And reading and math levels for 8th graders are at 20 and 21% respectively. So I would argue this school district has a lot of other priorities besides teaching kids about condoms, how to put on a condom, gender roles in society. One of the things they are teaching is bullying. I think that actually might be a smart lesson for some kids. But some of this other stuff, I was reading the report, Greta, it's been researched by the Kennedy School, NPR, the Kaiser Institute, a lot of libs getting their hands in your kids' education. I think it's really scary, particularly for 5-year-olds. Greta, I called a friend of mine before the show. His 5-year-old was up. I said, what's she talking about right now? He said, unicorns and dinosaurs. So it's the last magical stage of your life. I think we're corrupting our kids a little bit too soon.
Andrea, thank you, and congratulations on the big success of the 5 at 5.
Thank you so much, Greta.
10-year-olds, the quote, pleasures of sex. The folks at the International Planned Parenthood Federation apparently think that is a great idea. That group making the recommendation that's what we should teach our 10-year-olds in a new report titled Stand and Deliver. And by the way, they want that teaching to be mandatory. It is a suggestion that has critics calling Planned Parenthood a bunch of, quote, sex-obsessed adults. But is that fair? Joining me now, Fox News contributor and radio talk show host Monica Crowley. All right, Monica. This Planned Parenthood domestic won't comment on that because they say it's from our international branch and they're closed. We can't reach them right now. But they want this mandatory that we have not just sex ed for 10-year-olds, sex ed, but to teach them quote, the pleasures of sex.
Right. There are plenty of times, and there's plenty of time in somebody's life to learn the pleasures of sex. A 10-year-old should not be taught that. And here we've got an international organization that clearly wants to dictate to the domestic Planned Parenthood organization to set these guidelines for public schools and organizations. They essentially want the government to put this in place to force the role of sex education onto schools and teachers and the rest, supplanting the parents. This is the parent's role, Megan. This is not the role of anybody else except a parent. If a parent deems that their 10-year-old is growing and starting puberty early and maturing early, then it should be the parent's responsibility and the parent's right to say, gee, maybe my child needs a little bit more education here in terms of the birds and the bees, which now seems like a very quaint notion, right?
Yes.
Birds and the bees. But to hand it off to bureaucrats, whether it's international or domestic bureaucrats or even your kid's teacher, is ludicrous to me. It is an absolute, I think, total grabbing of control over what should remain in parents' hands.
You know, I asked our brain room to do some research on what 10-year-olds are learning right now in school, and you might be interested to know this is what the average 10-year-old is learning in a 5th grade. Addition and subtraction of fractions, using dictionaries, reading aloud.
Yes.
The pleasures of sex.
Yeah.
That's what they want to add to the list?
What's wrong with that list? Right, the last
listen,
one.
Well, let me take the other side, because it's obviously, I mean, I called it ridiculous in the tease, which is clearly editorializing, but I mean, can't we agree on anything that 10-year-olds should not be taught the pleasures of sex in class? All right, but let me take the other side. People say teen pregnancy is now trickling down. There was a story last week of an 11-year-old who gave birth, and the argument is people like that, kids like that, need to be taught because their parents aren't teaching them about contraceptives and so on.
Again, individual responsibility. Parents, parental role models, even I would say religious leaders, if they make a moral judgment. I mean, I think the problem here is that you've got an organization, Planned Parenthood, that is very aggressive on sex education, very aggressive on pro-choice and pushing the abortion option onto people of all ages, frankly. You have them coming at this with a political agenda. And my fear is that it is actually removing the role of parents, and if parents aren't present, other kinds of moral leaders, religious leaders, Megan, that can actually put sex into a greater context for
They don't
kids,
want that.
right?
This is
They
the
don't
issue
want that.
Planned Parenthood has. They say in the study, they say fundamentalists and other religious groups, including the Catholic Church and others, have imposed tremendous barriers to young people obtaining information related to sex. And they say currently many religious teachings deny the pleasurable and positive aspects of sex. They want the church out of the business of sex education altogether.
Exactly the statement that I zoned in on when I read this piece, Megan, because they set aside for particular criticism the Catholic Church, they set aside Islam, the Muslim religion, and some others saying, oh, well, they're blocking our kids from understanding the pleasures of sex, not the dangers, not unwanted pregnancy, the pleasures of sex. That's what this emphasis is, and that's why it's so outrageous.
Because it's not done until you're 16 years old.
It's so unbelievable, Megan, but this is a very secular, progressive agenda. And I think parents in this country, around the world, should stand up and say, this is our responsibility, because what we want to do for our 10-year-olds, our 12-year-olds, our 16-year-olds, our 18-year-olds, for God's sakes, is to give them some context for sex, whether it's religious, moral, values, religious, you name it. Yeah. But that is not present in this agenda.
You know, we're going to stay on this. We're going to continue pushing the domestic Planned Parenthood for a statement on this. I mean, I think some people may think, all right, it's international, it's the Netherlands Minister for Development Corporation, this guy Bert Koenders, who is backing this. So let's find out how the domestic Planned Parenthood feels about this and whether they are as far out as this.
Why can't we just let kids be kids, at least when they're 5? Now we have sex ed in kindergarten? This week, hundreds of outraged parents showed up at a school board meeting in Helena, Montana, carrying signs upset about the school district's plans for a new sex ed curriculum. Again, starting with kids as young as 5, teaching them about the body parts, proper terms. Here's a few of them: penis, vagina, nipples, testicles. For a 5-year-old, and you move on to 1st grade, taught about same-sex love. 5th grade, we get options for sex, including anal penetration. That's a 10-year-old. Hey, what about concentrating on math, science, English?
Leave the parents to handle those delicate issues of morality that should be taught at home. Or maybe you think this is age appropriate, we need to be teaching this. This is news and views. I think you know where I'm coming from. Where are you coming from on this one? Call us, 1-877-TELL-HLN. You go to Facebook, take our poll. Our kids in kindergarten, too young for...
When most people think of Planned Parenthood, they think of the babies it kills through abortion, or the mountains of birth control it dispenses. But another side to Planned Parenthood, which should be equally considered, is its obsession with sex. Sex toys, sex contests, sex balloons, penis-shaped balloons, penis cupcakes, vagina cakes, vagina macaroons, vagina fruit roll-ups, giant vagina costumes. All of these things play a central role in Planned Parenthood's community activities. But what's truly shocking is how these perverts are allowed unfettered access to our children while raking in government cash to sell them unrestrained sex. Oh, Planned Parenthood will claim that what they teach kids is scientific and age-appropriate. But the fact of the matter is that age-appropriate is a standard concocted by Planned Parenthood itself so that it can sell pornography to kids as science. Why would they do this? Just as the goal of a drug dealer is to make drug addicts, Planned Parenthood's goal is to make sex addicts, and they follow the same business model. For instance, Planned Parenthood's gateway drug is masturbation. One of its primary resources for 10-year-olds is a book called Is Perfectly Normal, and it sells masturbation to kids with graphic images of naked boys and girls masturbating, men and women having sex, and even things like this, and this, and this. If a dirty old man showed these things to a 10-year-old kid in a park, he'd be arrested. But when Planned Parenthood shows them to kids in a classroom, it gets government money. But that's just the start. Once they get to high school, right about the time that they hit puberty, Planned Parenthood tells vulnerable teens stimulating and intimate things about sex. Just look at what its website for teens says. The link to Our Bodies takes teens to a page that provides graphic displays of genitals and tells them about how pleasurable the clitoris is and how pleasurable breasts are to touch and massage. This section, on sex and masturbation, encourages boys and girls to masturbate and tries to dispel any embarrassment or hesitation in trying it. It also describes orgasms and encourages anal sex and oral sex. This section, titled LGBTQ, tells young teens that all sexual orientations are perfectly normal. The page on homosexuality, titled Coming Out, displays a teenage boy in an intimate pose with what appears to be an adult man. This section explains how to have gay sex using a condom, dental dam, and even plastic wrap. And for their viewing pleasure, Planned Parenthood's got a few things for teens to watch.
There's a penis on my body. Awesome! Being gay is a little like being left-handed. Any protection?
Yeah, of course.
Now this is a clitoral hood. See it?
That's right, better ring a ring dong. This is how the penis of vagina get it on.
Go penis! Go penis!
Winky trumpet curtain, Captain Winky song.
Time to go inside and find out.
Inside the vagina.
Calm down, Pete. You're leaking again.
It's bad enough that Planned Parenthood is conditioning children to engage in sexual activity with the kind of stuff that we've just shown you. But Planned Parenthood of Upper Hudson's youth program, which includes children as young as 13, requires participants to be exposed to sexual deviancy on parade. Literally. Planned Parenthood of Upper Hudson's application form for the STARS program for high school kids states that students as young as 13 are required to attend Capitol Pride. But this isn't just Planned Parenthood of Upper Hudson. As shown in this memo from 1969, Planned Parenthood's national goal is to restructure the family and encourage increased homosexuality as a sick form of population control. And that's why they expose our kids to stuff like this. in 4 teenage girls has an STD? All this exposure to sex takes place before graduation from high school. When these kids go to college, they'll be bombarded with sex-themed parties put on by Planned Parenthood Vox groups. Here's a brief look at some of the different ways Planned Parenthood spills its pornographic material to undergrads. Like this poster of a penis monster attacking a naked girl in a condom bubble. Is this image from a Vox party something that Planned Parenthood considers medically accurate? Here's Planned Parenthood doing its part in reducing men and women to sex objects. A party with no pants and free safe sex kits? That just screams date rape. Maybe a Planned Parenthood sex workshop about pleasure, desire, and orgasms is more age appropriate. At least your sons and daughters can enjoy the vulva puppet show and leave with a free sex toy. What Planned Parenthood education booth would be complete without a fisting kit for homosexual college and teenage students? But hey, America can sleep well knowing that its tax money is being put to good use, right? This is what Planned Parenthood is all about. Get the kids addicted to sex so it can sell them birth control. When teens catch a sexually transmitted disease, it sells them testing services. And when a young girl gets pregnant, it sells her an abortion.
His 13-year-old showed him a poster hanging on a classroom door, a poster listing sex acts.
The poster was hanging in a classroom in Hawker Grove Middle School in the Shawnee Mission School District, and Mark Ellis says if what it lists is part of the curriculum needs to change. And we do want to warn you, one parent found it objectionable, and you may too. Late last week, Mark Ellis's 13-year-old daughter showed him a picture of this poster.
Why would you put it in front of 13-year-old students?
He thought the poster, which lists things like oral sex and grinding, might have been a prank, until he contacted the school principal and was told it was a teaching material.
The poster that you reference is actually a part of our middle school health and science materials, and so it is a part of our district-approved curriculum. However, the item is meant to be part of a lesson, and so certainly as a standalone poster without the context of the teacher-led discussion, I could see that there might be some pause for concern.
But Ellis is now concerned that what's on this poster is being taught to his 13-year-old in school.
Who approved this? You know, this had to pass through enough hands that someone should have said, hey, wait a minute, these are 13-year-old kids.
District spokesperson Leanne Neal says the poster needs to be viewed in the context of a bigger curriculum, which she calls abstinence-based for students in middle school.
The curriculum is part of, it aligns with national standards around those topics, and it's a part of our curriculum in the school district.
But Ellis thinks if that's the case, the curriculum needs to change.
This has nothing to do with abstinence or sexual reproduction, actually, a lot of these things. I would like to see that this particular portion of this curriculum is removed from the school.
And if the curriculum doesn't change, Ellis plans to remove his daughter from the sexual education classes. We're told the poster has since been taken down. The district spokesperson says the main issue is that it should have never been left up after the lesson had ended. Ellis says he feels parents have a right to know what their children are learning, and he wants other parents to know that this is now part of the curriculum.
The following is an example of curriculum currently available to students in 12 metro school districts, including elementary, middle, and senior high school students. The title is It's Perfectly Normal. Keep in mind, this is for use with children as young as 10 years old in our public schools. Parental advisory. The following pictures are from the curriculum It's Perfectly Normal. They are very sexually explicit. Please remove children from viewing at this time. We know this material is disgusting. However, we believe it is necessary for citizens and parents to understand the pending danger House File 826 can and eventually will mandate on public schools. If you show a child 0 to 18 years old the following sexually explicit Common Core curriculum, It's Perfectly Normal, or they find it outside the walls of public schools, you or the adult could be charged with obscenity crimes under state statutes. However, our public schools are exempt from state obscenity laws and therefore free to expose our children to these or any unhealthy sexual behaviors, images, resources, and perversions they choose. Note, there are many good and excellent educators and administrators in our public schools who would not show this type of curriculum to students. However, if House File 826 passes and is signed into law by the governor, they will be mandated to use and implement this type of curriculum on children as young as 10 years old. This is why we have chosen to blank out areas of scanned pictures of the actual curriculum, It's Perfectly Normal, that is to be shown and taught to children in Minnesota public schools. Again, an adult outside the protection of the public school, unlike a teacher, could be charged with state obscenity laws. Due to state statutes, we have censored some of what is being shown in Minnesota public schools. Are these the comic stories you grew up with? Are they appropriate for elementary students? In Chapter 5 on page 16 and 17, children are taught that ancient Greeks thought that love between two men was the highest form of love. On page 57, it states, there are other ways people make love and have sex. When a person puts his or her mouth on a female's vulva or on a male's penis, this is called oral sex or oral intercourse. When a male's penis goes inside another person's anus, this is called anal sex or anal intercourse. Some people think that when people have oral sex or anal sex, they are not having sex. Keep in mind the curriculum censors the medical, biological, and genetic facts of such unhealthy and perverted behaviors and instead indoctrinates children as young as 10 years old with lies and deceit. We believe that the majority of taxpayers and parents do not believe that this type of curriculum is developmentally appropriate for children as young as 10 years old. Yet if HF 826 becomes law, this type of curriculum could be mandated into every public school in Minnesota. The following is where It's Perfectly Normal has been made available for students in 12 Minnesota metro school districts, including elementary, middle, and senior high school students. The consequences of showing young children sexually explicit and obscene material can be worse than what you think. Viewing obscene material releases a chemical called dopamine in the brain. This creates a related problem, what experts call tolerance. In other words, the need for more of a given stimulant, harder and weirder porn, for the same amount of dopamine. In the end, the result is what Deutsch politely calls potency problems. The study Use of Pornography in the Criminal and Developmental Histories of Sexual Offenders examined the exposure to and the usage of pornography in the histories of rapists and child molesters. The study found that both groups reported exposure to pornography and were significantly more likely to use pornographic materials before and during their offenses.
It's found in adult bookstores, video rentals, and sealed in black plastic bags. But the last place parents would expect to find pornography is in the hands of their 10-year-old child. Endorsed by Planned Parenthood, the book It's Perfectly Normal has a label on its front cover stating that it is for ages 10 and up. However, a Washington state jail recently rejected a fundraising letter featuring censored illustrations from the book because they are obscene or sexually explicit material as defined by policy. The content rejected by the prison was described by Planned Parenthood Vice President Michael McGee as delightful, while calling the book itself a boon for kids, their parents, and their teachers. The question is, if these images are too obscene for adult prisoners, why are they good for 10-year-old children? It's Perfectly Normal by Roby Harris has entire chapters devoted to sexual intercourse, contraception, masturbation, homosexuality, and abortion. Page 15 of the book explains that sexual intercourse, or having sex, can involve the penis and the vagina, or the mouth and the genitals, or the penis and the anus. Nowhere does the book describe the virtue of chastity, and in fact on page 48, Harris attacks the religious belief that masturbation is morally wrong by saying, some religions claim that masturbation is a sin, but masturbation cannot hurt you. She then provides illustrations of a young boy and a young girl masturbating with an accompanying how-to explanation. While the book is not a publication of Planned Parenthood, it is intimately connected with the nation's largest abortion chain. The author was on Planned Parenthood's National Board of Advocates, and at least 7 other members of Planned Parenthood were involved in the creation of the book. In addition to being endorsed on Planned Parenthood Federation of America's website, free copies of the book are distributed to children in grades 7 through 9 at their annual sex party in Waco, Texas. In several states, the contents of It's Perfectly Normal fall directly under the definition of pornography, and in some cases, child pornography. As Joanne Carcos of Lewiston, Maine recently said, after refusing to return the book to a public library, hopefully this will harness enough people to be sufficiently horrified and want to speak out, to say that it's gone too far. Indeed, Planned Parenthood has gone too far and should be charged with the distribution of pornography to minors.
It's inappropriate. It shouldn't be on school shelves. Today, we want to find out why his daughter was able to check it out from the library. The sexual education book includes some graphic illustrations.
And we sent Lisa Bailiff to get some answers from the school district. And Lisa, this book often on one of those lists for challenged books or even banned books.
That's right, Jenny. The book is called It's Perfectly Normal. But to some parents, it's not perfectly normal to let their preteen kids read it without parent approval.
I just think it's not right for young kids.
Russ is a concerned parent who doesn't like what he found in a book about sexual health available for checkout at his daughter's Covington Middle School. What bothers you about the book?
Well, for one, it's got the sexual positions. It tells them how it's pleasuring and teaches them how to masturbate.
The book about kids changing bodies and sex is aimed at ages 10 and up. It's gotten high marks from literary critics, but it gives lots of very detailed information about puberty and sex and shows explicit cartoon-like illustrations of sexual activity. I found out the Evergreen School District does have a policy that lets parents of elementary school students restrict their access to human growth and development books in the school library. But the policy doesn't apply to middle schoolers and high schoolers. The district says older kids can decide for themselves.
Why is that? At this point, it's the district policy. No one has brought it up as an issue at this point. And so if a parent brought it as a concern and said, we'd like you to look at that, and similar to policy to the elementary, that would be something the board of directors could consider.
Russ isn't sure yet how he and some other parents will try to get the book removed or monitored closer, but he wants something done.
A controversial book titled It's Perfectly Normal is being made available to middle school students in Missouri, and it has some parents fuming. It features cartoon drawings of naked people involved in sexual acts. The author says it teaches kids about their changing bodies, sexuality, and sexual health, but some parents still say it is just too much. Joining us from Missouri is Tim Schmidt. He is a parent who filed to have the book removed from the school's library. Tim, welcome to Arise America, and thank you so much for taking some time to speak with us. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
I just want you to set the stage, if you will, a little bit. How did you find out about this book, and what was your initial reaction when you saw it?
Sure. Well, when I first heard about this book, a friend of mine had put something online on Facebook and said that the book was available in their school district, and I just looked it up on a whim thinking surely it wouldn't be available in our school district. And I was really shocked to find out that it was available in our school district, and it's available in our middle schools, and it's available without parental consent.
Well, not being too terribly graphic, but being descriptive enough so we understand, what is it that's in this book that you object to?
Sure. Well, the book is full of naked images of men, women, and children. The book shows naked people engaged in sexual intercourse, has an image of a young man and a young girl masturbating. It teaches the kids how to do all these sexual things. And I'm not opposed to sex ed, but I am opposed to things like this being put in front of young children without parental knowledge or consent.
So what at this age do you think is appropriate for students to see and learn?
Well, I really think that's up to the parents. We have great schools. Don't get me wrong. I'm not opposed to our schools. But I think when it comes to matters like sexual education, that's really the parent's role and the parent's decision on what's appropriate for their child. I believe every child is different, and different children mature at different ages. And so for the school to put this in our libraries and make it available without our knowledge or consent, I just feel like that's an issue. And many parents have felt the same.
I want to bring in another professional, but before I do, we did reach out to the Francis Howell School District and invited them to tell their side of the story. They gave us this statement instead, which says in part, after the review process was completed by the Reconsideration Committee, it was determined to keep the ebook available as a resource for checkout in the library. If a parent determines that she does not want their child to have access to certain materials, we honor that request. So they at this point are not going to take the book out, but they will, according to this statement, keep a student from checking this book out if their parents say they don't want them to. However, you filed a complaint to remove this book altogether. Why is this action not enough for you?
Well, actually, their statement's a little disingenuous because without this, without me bringing this up and bringing this to the public attention, most parents wouldn't know that this book was in the library to begin with. So any child could have went and checked this book out, and now parents do know about it. So of course parents can take that action. But to say that this book was only available well, the book is available whether parents consent or not. It's only going to not be given to the children if the parents send something in saying.
Oh, hi! I'm hanging out with my good friend, Tracy. Sent here to teach us about sex education.
That's right, Spud. I'm from the National Sexuality Administration, and I'm here to teach you everything you need to know about the birds and the bees.
Oh, boy! I have so many questions.
Well, ask away, Spud.
Okay. Think. And your identity?
Well, this is how a person identifies themselves according to their gender. Most people develop a gender identity that does correspond with their biological sex, but some do not.
Like a gay, lesbian, or transgender person?
Well, slow down, Spud. That's several lessons ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, what's sexual intercourse?
Well, sexual intercourse is when a penis is inserted into a vagina, a mouth, or an anus.
Oh, Tracy, my friend's mommy got an abortion the other day because she had sexual intercourse. What is an abortion?
An abortion is a medical intervention that ends a pregnancy. If your friend's mommy had used birth control, she could have prevented the abortion.
Right. Well, that makes sense. Okay, kids. Next week, we will discuss the different kinds of birth control that prevent pregnancy and disease. Yay! Please play video file 33. Practicing
I remember him using this in his campaign against me, saying Barack Obama supports teaching sex education to kindergartners. And, which I didn't know what to tell him. But it's the right thing to do.
I hope you guys see what is happening, because this is just downright disgusting. They are teaching kindergartners about sex. Why does kindergartners, a 5-year-old child, a 4 and 5-year-old child, need to know anything about sex? They don't. They don't need to know about homosexuality. They don't need to know about sex. They don't need to see pictures. They don't need to know nothing about sex. They are turning this country into Babylon. They are turning this country into a communist, Babylonian country. Ever since Common Core came into place, when Obama got put in office, It's been nothing but chaos, and man, what is wrong with people? What is wrong with people? Who in their right mind would want to teach kindergartners about sex and then feel it's okay for children to check out a book or to look at a book with naked bodies having sex? I don't care if they are cartoon or not. That is pornographic material, and they all need to be charged with man, I'm just so mad. You guys need to check. And did you know what else I found out? The school does not have to tell you when they are teaching the sex ed or if they even are teaching it. Yes, I found that out. They are turning us into a communist Babylonian country. Get your kids out of these schools. If you love your children, you will get them out of these public schools that are doing nothing but brainwashing your children. Do you know the easiest way to brainwash a child is to erase their history? Do you know that your child gets not taught one bit of history in school now? This is true. Look it up. This is true. They get taught nothing about their history at all. These children are being brainwashed by this Common Core crap. Do you know there was a poll done? And ninth graders feel that the government has the right to do anything they want to do. That we should have to ask the government for permission for anything. And this is only been taught since Obama's been there. Wait till a whole generation grows up in this crap. Get your children out of these schools if you value and love your children and want to protect them. This is just sickening. It is utterly sickening to see this happening in our country. And you know what? What the sad part is? Nobody's going to say anything. Nobody's going to do anything. They're just going to sit back and let this crap happen. And that's a doggone shame.
I want you to talk me through this. These are, I want you to look at the document, you can find it online. These are the National Sexuality Education Standards. They were published in September of 2012, right when Common Core was being implemented. This is a federal program. The fact that it's national means that, right? The fact that there's standards, educational standards, means how are they going to, what's the only way they're going to be able to assess them? Tests. When do they start teaching your kids sex? What's the subtitle tell you? Okay. Do you teach your 5-year-olds about sex? Do you teach your kindergartners about homosexuality? Because they're doing it now. They are doing it. These are the National Sexuality Standards. Kindergarten. Tell me what the subtitle means. When they call it core content, what do you think that means? What core? Well, now see, that's where they'll yell at me. You'll see the problem there. Okay, open this document to the 6th page and you'll see this. When the sexuality standards were being put together, they consulted with other things. Look at the last thing on that list. Common Core, English, and Math. Explain to me why a sexuality curriculum, explain to me why it is consulting English and Math. And why is it consulting only Common Core English and Common Core Math? In September of 2012, there only was Common Core English and Common Core Math. Why aren't they consulting non-Common Core Science? Why those two, if this has nothing to do with Common Core? And what does sex have to do with English class? Oh wait, we answered that, didn't we? Remember that question we left hanging that Sandy asked? Why is there so much sex in your English textbooks? Why are there so many books in the English curriculum that are graphically and sexually inappropriate? Why are so many of the math assignments couched in story problems that are shockingly suggestive? Why? Well, now I think you have an answer. You understand that the national sexuality standards were never meant to be rolled out like a separate curriculum. State of Texas, well, we'll take the English and the math, but we're not going to take the sex standards. Because you know what? If they rolled out these sexuality standards, like they rolled out the other subjects, nobody would take them. These standards were constructed, and it's telling you what they did. These standards were constructed to be fed into every aspect of the Common Core curriculum. What the plan here is to make, because you know, we don't put 5-year-olds in a biology class. We don't have biology for 5-year-olds teaching sex. We don't put 6-year-olds into sex education classes. The only way we're going to get your kids to meet these standards is if we add to every single subject Common Core teaches, we add sexuality component. Because you can't just, if these are standards that your kids are going to have to be tested on, you can't just do it 5 minutes at the once a week. And that's the plan of Common Core. Do you know there are already plans underway to make art, music, and gym Common Core compliant? Gym class is going to have to conform to Common Core. Because this is about control. Let me show you what they do with your kids is they break your kids up into 3-year cycles. 5, 6, and 7-year-olds, test. 8, 9, and 10-year-olds, test. 11, 12, and 13-year-olds, and so on. Let me show you what they want your 5, 6, and 7. Now keep in mind, you don't teach your 5-year-olds about sex. So this raises a question, doesn't it? You don't teach your 5-year-olds about sex for a bunch of reasons. It's inappropriate, they're not old enough to process it, you want them to be children, but they're doing it. So what do? You ignore it, they win. You decide you're going to start teaching your kids your version of sexuality at age 5, well, they win too because you're sexualizing your children. What do? And if it's a national standard, you can't opt out of it. And by the way, even if you wanted to opt out of it, how do you opt out of English class? Do you see what they've done? It's not a lesson or a time block. It's an entire curriculum now. How do you opt your kid out of English? Because English is the problem now. Not national sex, not sex ed. It's English that's the problem. And math that's the problem. And you can bet history and science will be the problem too. You have to get out all of those. Here's what they do. And here's the last thing I'll say too. Even if you think the federal government should be teaching kids about sex, even if you think it is the job of the federal government to teach your kids about birth control, I disagree entirely. But even if you believe that, the shocking thing about these standards is that they have nothing to do with birth control. 5, 6, and 7-year-olds, here are the standards for those kids. By the time your daughter's 7, she will identify different kinds of family structures and demonstrate ways to show respect for different types of families. Now look, I want my kids to be respectful, whatever their positions are. But that means your kids, by the time they're 7, are going to have to be exposed to homosexual marriage, to polyamorous marriage, right? Aren't they? And who gets to determine what respect is? Whose definition of respect is it? Why is the fact, this is an opinion question. Why does the federal, and for a 6-year-old, why does the federal, do you understand what's happening here? For kids this young, 5 and 6-year-olds, you can't teach them about sex. All you are doing is imprinting things on their brains. You are indoctrinating them. You are grooming them. If by the time your daughter is 7, she has to demonstrate proper respect for all different kinds of marriage, and it's the school or the state or the federal government that determines what if you come from an Orthodox Jewish family? What if you come from a Christian family? Or what if you come from a Quranic Muslim family? And your views of sexuality, your family views, are not the same. Can you disagree with gay marriage and still be respectful. Do you think the federal government wants to do that? And what does a 6-year-old know about it? It's pretty shocking when you think about it. Look at the next one. Describe differences and similarities in how boys and girls may be expected to act. Because in a curriculum where right answers aren't even true in math, then certainly gender's not a real thing. You know what this is? This is gender. This is the idea that there is no such thing as male and female, boy or girl. That is all just a cultural construct. That what you are genetically and biologically has nothing to do with what you are. And even if you believe in that, even if you believe that sex is all just made up, people are the gender they say they are, regardless of even if you believe that, how in the world do you get a 6-year-old to come to grips with this? Why would you want 6-year-olds dealing with this? Describe differences and similarities in how boys and girls may be expected to act. Look at the next one.